I'm all about patterns. I think patterns are very helpful. And one of the things we tried to stress last week is that if you have a Boolean operator or a Boolean operator or, and there are two inputs, and let's call the first input A and the second input B. You could say those are, variable A and variable B if you want to get math fancy, right? Or basically what happens is that you have 2 to the second power. You have two inputs. So you have 2 squared. Here we have 3 inputs. So that's 2 cubed number of possible outputs, right? So if we look at all the possible combinations of values, binary values that can be fed into a 2 input OR versus a 2 input AND, we have 0 and 0, 0 and 1, 1 and 0, and 1 and 1. And then if we have a 3 input Boolean operator, a 3 input OR versus a 3 input and we have input 1, input 2, input 3, or in this case, we're going to say input X, input Y, input Z. Whatever kind of symbol or label you want to use for the inputs is fine. You have 2 to the third number of possibilities. You have all zeros and all ones at the top and the bottom. But I want you to notice, half of the first inputs over here are 0, half are ones, and then 0, 1, 0, 1. In this case, half of the first column are zeros, half are ones. In the second column, you have half of the halves are zeros. So instead of having 4, you have 2 zeros, 2 ones, 2 zeros, 2 ones. Then you have 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, right? And then you have the case for 4 inputs, whether it's input 1 or variable 1, input 2 or variable 2, could be LMNO, right? Input L, input M, input N, input O. What you have is a case where half of the first inputs are zeros, the other half are ones. Half of those halves in the second column, or 4 inputs, are 0, 4 ones, 4 zeros, 4 ones. 2 zeros, 2 ones, 2 zeros, 2 ones. 2 zeros, 2 ones. And then in the last column, like every last column, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, all the way down, right? And in each case, we're showing the output that results from AND. The only one that becomes an AND is the last. So one of the things we can say is that the AND operator is the most restrictive operator, because unless all the inputs are 1 or true, the output is always going to be false. The output's never going to be true unless every one of the inputs is true. It's the most restrictive operator. Does everyone understand what we mean by restrictive? And by that, when we say restrictive, the focus is not on the values 1 and 0, but really true and false. Because remember, in the Boolean world, you can represent your values by 1 and 0, yes and no, true and false, right and wrong, black and white, any two polar opposite values, right? Plus and minus, whatever. Only one case is true for the output. So every other one is no, 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 and then yes. So why am I showing you this? And why am I saying that I'm going to insist on being difficult? Templates are really only as good as people know how to use them and fill them out. And I think one of the skills that you should master is your own ability to fill out an empty truth table. So one of the first set of templates I want to put out there is going to be blank. And I want you to practice. I know this sounds stupid, but I want you to practice filling them out. Now, I'm going to pause the recording for a second, and I'm going to ask for your opinion about whether you think that's busy work or it's dumb. Because this is going to go out on YouTube later, and I don't care to get mauled by a bunch of angry students. But I'm just going to pause this so you can express yourself freely without worrying about other people seeing this or hearing this later. So I'm going to pause the recording. So I will give you blank templates, and what I want you to be able to do with the blank template is to start from scratch. Even though we used some populated templates for quick examples with only simple or and simple and scenarios, I want you to be able to work with blank templates. So if you see a blank template and I give you a problem, a solution that says, hey, you have a scenario where input 1 and input 2 are inputs J and Q of an OR operator. Give me the 4 different types of output that will result from OR with J and Q inputs. We're going to take this blank table, you know, to start with half of the first column being zeros, half being ones, and so on until you get to the last column where it's 0 and 1 and 0 and 1. And then you're going to take this and substitute J and Q. Then you're going to, for the inputs, you're going to put, if it's AND, what you have here is something that looks like this. You have 2 inputs, J and Q, for a Boolean operator AND. So you're going to substitute the letters J and Q up here, and then here's your truth table. You know it's the AND, so you know it's going to be 0, and that's a 0, and that's a 0, and that's a 1. So that's how I would like you to be able to work openly in different scenarios with blank templates. Are there any questions before we go on to other truth table scenarios?
Yes, Dr. Kintop. Okay. Okay, well, the question is would you mix up the one in input values with different letters?
Yes.
Would you mix them? Okay.
Yes. In fact, that's an excellent question. And thank you for asking that, LeQuinn, because in some cases I might say this. Okay. So let's say we have and then we have a sensor input D and sensor input K. You could put the template is only good if it's flexible, if it's open-ended. And if I give you prefabricated templates, you're going to become dependent on the idea. And then when a new solution or a new scenario comes along, if you don't see the columns with the same inputs and outputs, a lot of students draw a blank. It's like the deer in the headlights moment. I want to work differently this semester. I want you to get into the habit of looking at the criteria for a scenario and then modifying the blank template. And you can have a truth table with 4 inputs and 16 values already set up, but you want to be able to work the top and the sides. You want to be able to change it up as needed. Great question.